Hey everybody, it's PartyElite here with another online battle today, perhaps one of the most back and forth ones I've fought. I go in as the Dwarfs, a faction that I really don't play often enough, and my opponent, Ken, comes in as the Dark Elves. We begin, of course, with talk of composition and deployment, and as you can see, we have cross-deployed over here, but I have the artillery advantage, so I can hold my ground. I've got a Rune Lord in charge atop his anvil, alongside a Thane up front over here with Tormentor Sword ready for enemy cavalry. The front line consists of these 4 units of long beards, and right behind them I've got 3 units of rangers with great weapons, one of them of course being Ulthar's Raiders. Behind them I've got a unit of Slayers to the left and a unit of Dragonback Slayers to the right, while in the middle I have the Grudge Thrower able to get some shots off right from the beginning. And then tucked away in these trees over here I do have the Peak Gate Guard. These Hammerers are extremely dangerous. I'm hoping to push them in for some flanking maneuvers, some rear charges, whatever their speed will allow. Now I have got a bit of a shortage here. I didn't finish composing my army before we started the battle, so I still had 444 points left to spend. While on the other side of the field, there's a pretty threatening force, actually. Marathi is in charge on foot, alongside not 1, but 2 Death Hags, one of whom is atop the Cauldron. We have this front line of 4 units of Dread Spears, and right behind them a unit of Witch Elves on either flank, and then all the way at the back in the center, we have the Blackguard of Nagron. These guys are armor-piercing and anti-large, so they will do quite a bit of damage against my Rune Lord. We also have to the side over here these Cold One Knights, and up front 2 units of Dark Riders with shields, while to the left over here we have this unit of Dark Riders alongside some Shades, and these Dark Riders with repeater crossbows. So a very large range contingent, a fair bit of cavalry capability as well, with a Death Hag atop the Cauldron, so hoping to perhaps come in for some flanking maneuvers, shut down my artillery, my range support, and then come in for rear charges as well. Unfortunately for my opponent, I have deployed all the way over here instead, and I'm able to get those early shots off, and you can see the first couple shots over here going in against this exposed unit of Cold One Knights, getting a little bit of damage in here, not too much, maybe dropping one of those models, or 2 of those models actually, so doing a touch of damage here and there, and as they pull back I can actually see these Witch Elves now, and I decide that they're the ideal target instead, as I don't like Rampage. I don't like the Madness of Cain inflicted upon my units, rather. So just try to get a little bit of damage in there as well. Hope to hurt these girls before they're able to do any work of their own. So you can see just a couple of shots going in there, not doing too much work. And at the same time, you can see as these Dark Riders with shields are creeping through the trees, hoping to get some rear charges, I actually rearrange my Slayers over here, just blocking them off, making sure I don't get any surprises in my back, while the Thane gets pulled back over here as well, ready with Tormentor Sword in case push comes to shove. And at the same time, you can see the Grudge Thrower just firing away, finally getting some damage into these Witch Elves, doing a fair bit of hurt there, actually eliminating a handful of the individuals there, hoping to get that damage in nice and early before we're closing any lines. And the Dark Elves have a long way to go. You can see over here again, just adjusting where these Slayers are. I'm a little nervous that something is sneaking through the trees over here. I haven't spotted anything just yet, but I am just a little concerned. And you can see I continue to fire away at these Witch Elves, getting a fair bit of hurt in, but unfortunately there is that other unit of Witch Elves still very much okay from the Dark Elves, and these Death Hags as well are causing me some serious concern. I'm a little worried about how much damage they're going to cause, and there's a very large cavalry contingent. I have come barely prepared for so much cavalry on the field. You can see though I've turned around and the Grudge Thrower is now firing away at some of these Dark Riders with shields. Those shields aren't going to do much against these massive rocks, and they decide to pull away off to the side. So good awareness there by my opponent, just trying to stay hidden in these trees, but unfortunately unable to. I think finding a good nook there, able to hide there, but one last rock goes in, causes a touch of damage, and they pull back once more. And you can see I've sort of stood my ground, and now that I'm finally pretty confident that there are no more Dark Elves coming in from the left over here, I ultimately decide to rotate, to pivot my formation. So in just a moment's time, you'll see I actually turn my formation around, and I decide to abandon the little hidden spot back here for my Hammerers as well, and I peel them forward as well, alongside the Rune Lord. As you can see, the Slayers, though, they hold their ground over here, as I'm pretty convinced that all the cavalry is coming in through the trees over here. So I maintain the lines over there. I keep the Thane over there as well, as my enemy reveals more and more troops to me. I now finally see the Shades, so a little worried about that. They are armor-piercing, of course. So again, just a growing cause for concern as these guys get closer and closer. That first volley comes into my Longbeards, doing a touch of damage. I do have bronze shields, so not entirely concerned by that. But over here you can see Melkot's Mystifying Miasma, just trying to take care of some of these Rangers with great weapons to get rid of some of that armor-piercing range capability as early as possible. And this cavalry, you can see, is pushing off to the side, hoping to get pretty aggressive. I pop Master Rune of Wrath and Ruin atop these Witch Elves over here to the left. Again, just trying to finish at least one of these Witch Elf units off as quickly as possible, and slowing them down as well so they take some time before they can close the gaps. And the Rangers here, you can see, focusing in on these Dread Spears as they try to close the gap. Unfortunately, they do have silver shields, so they will hold up well enough, but that's the least I can do, or the most I can do, I suppose, while these Longbeards are shifting off to the side, hoping to shut down these Witch Elves, and these Longbeards are pulling in to intercept these Dread Spears. The front, meanwhile, you can see in the center over here, the Death Hag atop the Cauldron is about to do a number on my troops here, just charging right through, and you can see back here another use of Soul Blight this time, reducing armor in this massive clump, and that Death Hag is hoping to push right through and get some damage done into these Rangers. And you can see at the same time I respond by using Marked by Ulthar atop the Death Hag. I've got the Thane coming in, and I also have my Dragonback Slayers pushing in. And at the same time, you can see I'm getting these Slayers into position as well, trying to keep an eye on these Dark Riders with shields that have made their way behind me. I have to be very meticulous, as my opponent has got me fully surrounded. And you can see the Death Hag is in a bit of a tight spot, all that range fire coming in, doing a lot of damage. At the same time, these Dark Riders get a nice charge, trying to get right through my Slayers into the Grudge Thrower, and they do manage to get through, unfortunately. The Witch Elves over here as well, able to just push through. They have a free avenue of access over here, but the Slayers are there and they are engaged. So I'm not going to do terribly over here, as these Slayers with their anti-large capabilities will start cutting down these Dark Riders with shields, who really aren't all that great in melee. In the center over here, meanwhile, you can see Soul Blight is still very much active, but that Death Hag has taken a lot of damage and very quickly dropping down now, while up front I am having a hard time holding the line against so many enemy units. The Hammerers alongside these Longbeards to the left have done well so far, but the Cold One Knights are now coming in for some nice charges into the backs of my Longbeards, I think, hoping to get some damage done, but again, they have to be very careful there. Though they are armor piercing, they have the ability to go rampaging, and you really don't want that to happen to your troops. I do have my Rune Lord in here as well, trying to keep these Longbeards alive and fighting. Going to activate some runes shortly, and you can see back here again, these Dark Riders with shields just able to push right through and deal some serious damage to my Ulthar's Raiders over here. I pop Master Rune of Negation just in time to avoid some of the damage being done there, and at the same time diving in to avoid the level of damage being put onto these Longbeards in the center over here, but not able to come out on top. Still losing the battle over here, and over here, though, you can see these Cold One Knights just not able to retreat quickly enough. They have taken about 50% health damage. My Rangers are able to pull into some safety, but these Dragonback Slayers now rampaging. The Ulthar's Raiders as well, caught in an engagement against the Dark Riders, ultimately coming out on top thanks to these Dragonback Slayers. And off to the distance over here, you can see these Shades and the Dark Riders with repeater crossbows just firing away, hoping to pick off at my Thane, actually, while over here these Longbeards are now able to push in and provide some assistance over here, but they do get hit by Melkot's Mystifying Miasma, causing a fair bit of damage and slowing them down even further. Insult to injury there as a Murderous Prowess kicks in, and back here you can see again these rampaging cavalry units just diving into my range with great weapons. The Ulthar's Raiders are able to provide some assistance though, tossing some axes, getting some damage in while I try to peel away into safety, and you can see over here these Slayers as well being sent in to try and intercept some of these Cold One Knights. In the center, meanwhile, you can see I still have the Master Rune of Oath and Steel active. Now Soul Blight comes in as well, but my Master Rune of Oath and Steel is able to counteract some of the armor damage it's doing, but unfortunately the weapon damage reduction is quite hefty as well, and at the same time I do have these Hammerers able to come in for a nice rear charge. I managed to pull them in from that left flank engagement, and I have them charging into the backs of these Blackguard of Nagron, who are doing a number on my Rune Lord. Of course, they are armor piercing and anti-large, so the Rune Lord is in a terrible situation, while my Thane over here now using Foe Seeker to close the gap on these Dark Riders and these Shades, hoping to prevent them from firing away, while back here you can see the Grudge Thrower has been very quickly taken care of. It has basically been a non-issue ever since front lines met. I was finally able to get the Rune Lord out of this terrible situation, and you can see though Marathi is stuck in, but she's doing a lot of work, firing in, focusing in with all of these Rangers with great weapons, and also needing to keep them protected, so these Slayers are pushing in, hoping to block out any avenues of access, and you can see the Rune Lord is in a terrible spot here, as the Witch Elves as well as the Death Hag focusing in on the Rune Lord, causing a lot of trouble, and these Rangers as well not able to get clear shots, unfortunately, and once more hit by Melkot's Mystifying Miasma, as my Slayers are being sent in just to engage with anything to try and free up my Rune Lord. Back here though, you can see the Thane was able to keep these ranged units occupied, and now I need to get that Thane away because he is losing his current engagement, and I don't really want him to get locked off that far away from these main battles over here. You can see the Blackguard of Nagron finally falling apart. Master Rune of Wrath and Ruin again coming in to cause some damage, as the Hammerers as well getting a fair bit of work done, and you can see over here another beautiful charge by these Dark Riders, getting a nice charge into some of these Slayers, but unfortunately the Slayers will come out on top, while over here you can see we have these Dark Riders coming in for another beautiful rear charge into my Ulthar's Raiders, as well as these Rangers with great weapons. So very nicely done by my opponent, I have to say, staying on top of my ranged capabilities with his cavalry. So beautifully done there, and you can see in the center this massive clump over here, Marathi is finally taking some damage, so that's great for me. I try to pop Marked by Ulthar, and I managed to get it off, but unfortunately all of these ranged units are actually caught in a terrible situation with all of this cavalry atop of them. Back here the Thane is still not able to get loose from this terrible situation either, and you can see a lot of rampaging kicking off for some of my Slayers, some of my Longbeards as well, and the Rune Lord keeping him engaged in this central position. So again, great use of the Witch Elves, using Rampage to keep my Rune Lord in a situation that I would rather not have him in, while back here these Hammerers are getting a lot of work done. The Peak Gate Guard are a wonderful unit, just absolutely devastating the Blackguard of Nagron as well as the Dread Spears, and you can see some of my units are rallying off in the distance here, but they are very slow, of course. So as they slowly creep their way towards this main engagement, I am losing control of the battlefield. You can see the balance of power is not in my favor whatsoever. And over here as well, these Dark Riders are doing a number on my Rangers. You can see I get these Dragonback Slayers into these Dark Riders, so I'm able to pull these Rangers back into some safety so they can turn around and start firing away at Marathi once more. I need to drop her, but you can see here the Rune Lord has given up on the fight. Very low on health, very low on morale, just barely able to get away. Soul Blight goes down as well, causing even more trouble for me, reducing armor, reducing weapon damage output as well. But you can see the Rune Lord just barely able to escape, and the Witch Elves temporarily, I think, give chase, but ultimately decide to stay engaged in this central clump. And you can see I'm in a terrible situation right now, especially with Soul Blight still active. We have all of these ranged units now firing in as well. The Thane looking for an opportunity to dive in and take care of Marathi. I need to take care of enemy leadership to balance the playing field. The Longbeards over here finally able to dive in and provide a nice bit of morale damage to the Dread Spears, while back here I have these Longbeards as well, creeping their way slowly in. But these guys over here, these Longbeards just sitting there, looking pretty. I needed every unit active in the battle right now, and unfortunately these guys were just standing there, and I needed to push them in and get some support. And you can see these Raiders meanwhile, and the Rangers do get pulled back a little bit further, just trying to keep them safe from all of these cavalry units that are causing me trouble. And at the same time, these Shades just continue to fire away and do a fair bit of work to various units of mine that are routing away. The Hammerers, though, the Peak Gate Guard, are doing wonderfully, still alive, causing a lot of damage. They're probably my MVP in this battle. Extremely important unit there, as the Thane is also finally able to dive in here using Tormentor Sword in this giant clump to just reduce the melee capabilities. Obviously these guys aren't going anywhere anyway, but I want to reduce their melee attack capabilities to cause some extra damage. You can see the Thane is doing a number on Marathi, using Deadly Onslaught to help out, and Marathi's health and morale dropping significantly as my Rune Lord back here has rallied, and I'm trying to bring him back in to provide some of that runic support as the rest of my army is giving up. You can see these Longbeards are giving up on the fight. The Peak Gate Guard are still in there, but these Shades as well, using Master Rune of Wrath and Rune atop them to keep them slow and keep them damaged. You can see they're closing the gap towards my Rune Lord, and I'm extremely worried about what's about to go on over there. Rune Lord is closing the gap again, hoping to use his runes for some support, and you can see this beautiful volley from the Dark Riders with repeater crossbows, just absolutely destroying my Rune Lord. His throne, or his anvil rather, drops, he drops, and I'm in a terrible spot as far as leadership is concerned. You can see these Rangers have given up on the fight as well. I've got these Longbeards, they've routed for a while now. Ulthar's Raiders just barely managing to stick around. These Witch Elves, though, doing a number on them as they are anti-infantry capable, while over here the Thane now is trying to take care of the Death Hag, but the Death Hag is also very dangerous as she is anti-infantry. Finally, I notice these Longbeards are sitting idle, doing nothing, so I send them in to try and provide some assistance, and over here you can see these Shades are creeping away, and again, they can open shots off and get some damage in from a distance, and they're a very threatening and scary unit. I have to shut them down, and you can see these Peak Gate Guard over here are going to turn around and get engaged over here as they try to charge in to my Ulthar's Raiders. I pull Ulthar's Raiders back into safety, and I send the Peak Gate Guard in to intercept this incoming charge, marked by Ulthar as well. These Shades hoping to get some shots in and eliminate that very threatening, armor-piercing unit as quickly as possible. I think my opponent here was hoping to get some morale damage into these Ulthar's Raiders, but unfortunately just not able to, and you can see there comes the order to pull back as the rest of these units here are giving chase to some of these guys to keep them at bay, keep them at a distance, make sure they're not able to fire away. And at the same time, you can see my Thane as well was chasing that Death Hag away, ultimately deciding to pull back and provide some support to the Peak Gate Guard over here. The Hammerers are essential to my situation right now. You can see the Shades are pulling away. They are fast, so they're going to be able to keep a safe distance, but I have to be persistent. I open some shots off, get a little bit of damage in. Unfortunately, marked by Ulthar does run off just before I'm able to get the damage in from those axes, but the Peak Gate Guard alongside the Thane giving chase right now, while back here I have a couple more of my Rangers rallying, willing to fight once more, and you can see I am forming up once more, as is my opponent, and I love seeing this online. We're just forming up, getting ready for, well, you know, sort of one last final hurrah. My opponent is doing the same thing, using trees as cover, while hoping that these Shades, I think, will survive, because if these Shades are left alone, they can come in later on for some shots into my backs, and that'll do a lot of work. That'll harm me significantly, and I cannot let them live as a result of that. So you can see the Peak Gate Guard over here just giving chase, persistent as ever, hoping to close that gap. You can see they turn around and open some shots off, and those shots are quite nerve-wracking. I get very worried about these guys because they might just drop. You can see their morale is dropping, their health is very low, but again, they continue to charge through these trees, hoping to get some damage into the Shades over here, and they switch to their swords, they dive in, get a nice counter charge in there, and a lot of damage being done on both sides. The Shades are coming out on top. You can see morale dropping at the same time for both sides here. Neither side able to stick around and fight, but they both drop at the same time, so both units give up and rout. A very tense situation there, and then back at the center over here, you can see I am just looking for an opportunity to creep forward. I know my opponent is probably not going to be aggressive. He's got the safety of the trees, keeping him protected from any range support I have, and I have very little left from these one unit of rangers with great weapons, so it's a bit of a tight spot for me. I could very easily get outmaneuvered. The elves are, of course, faster. They can fire from a greater range, and you can see these Ulthar's Raiders here taking a fair bit of damage with all of that range fire coming in, so I'm obviously very nervous about the situation. You can see at the back over here, my hammers have returned to the fight, but they're very far away, and again, they are dwarves that are quite slow, and at the front over here, you can see once more my Longbeards are hit by Melkot's Mystifying Miasma, not only slowing them down, buying these Dark Riders with the repeater crossbows more time to fire away at me, but also reducing their health. So an increasingly nerve-wracking situation. As I close the gap over here, you can see these Rangers are finally able to get some shots off, and I focus in on these Dark Riders with the repeater crossbows, hoping to scare them off, do a little bit of damage here and there, maybe scare them off, and then I have to send them in a little bit closer because I'm hoping to focus in on Morathi next. You can see the Thane uses Foe Seeker and Deadly Onslaught as these charges come in, and take a look at this. I pop Tormentor Sword just before Morathi and the Death Hag are able to charge me, lock them in place, and now it's time to get a full surround. I send my Thane in for a nice rear charge as my Ulthar's Raiders as well as the Longbeards dive in full force against the Dreadspears as well as the Death Hag and Morathi. And the most important thing about Tormentor Sword right now is the reduction in melee attack on both the Death Hag as well as Morathi. At the back, meanwhile, you can see these Rangers fired their last couple shots, and now they dive in as Morathi drops dead, and that reduces morale. Of course, for the Dark Elves, you can see these Dread Spears are about to give up on the fight, but I'm still not home free. These guys are able to fire away, and they can do a fair bit of damage. You can see these Dread Spears are still very much alive, but morale is dropping. The Death Hag is now the center of attention. You can see getting a fair bit of damage over there, but she is coming out on top. My Thane is very low on health as well. Despite using Deadly Onslaught, he's not coming out on top, but we get a full surround on the Death Hag. Morale dropping significantly. She is wavering. She's about willing to give up on the fight, and there you go. There's the rout. There's the shatter. The Dread Spears over here deciding to shatter as well, so too do those Dark Riders, and a Pyrrhic victory for my Dwarves. Now, I didn't think I was going to win this battle. My opponent did a very good job of surrounding me and being consistent and constant with his cavalry charges. My range units were often busy, my Slayers were giving chase consistently, and the Witch Elves were very well used as well to try and pin down my Rune Lord in a terrible situation. And ultimately, when my Rune Lord died, I thought it was over for me. Thankfully, I was able to reform, I was able to shut down those shades, and I was able to charge in and use Tormentor Sword to give me the advantage at the very last moment. As always, make sure you subscribe to this channel for more Total War content, online battles, and Total Breakdown will bring you a constant flow of tactical analysis and advice. And naturally, we're always keeping an eye out to the horizon as well. Lots of Total War games coming out this year. Thank you very much for watching, and I look forward to meeting you on the battlefield.